that we really hadn't done before because you have so many rookies. You have 2 rookie quarterbacks. You're trying to maximize every minute you have.
I took that as a sneak diss and basically him refusing to say his name because he did not say his name again.
Fans are losing it again because Kevin Stefanski did something nobody saw coming. How do you talk about practice? How do you break down reps? How do you discuss 2 quarterbacks battling each other every day and still refuse to say Shedeur Sanders' name? What does that even mean? Is this a message? Is this pressure? Is this a sign something bigger is happening behind the scenes? And why did he highlight DILLON Gabriel's reps but suddenly go silent when it came to Shedeur? From the very start, Stefanski acts like a man who wants control more than he wants truth. He talks in circles, hides behind rookie talk, and pretends everything is about structure and routine, when everyone can see what's really going on. He dodges names, he dodges accountability, and he dodges the one quarterback the entire fan base wants clarity on. Why is it so hard for him to speak straight? Why can't he give Shedeur the basic respect that every player deserves? And at what point does this behavior cross the line from being cautious to looking like someone who is scared, petty, or even unstable? Because that's exactly how he comes off, a man obsessed with control, shutting down anything that threatens his version of the story. Instead of addressing Shedeur like a normal head coach, he gives this weird, cold energy, as if saying the kid's name would expose some truth he doesn't want out. It feels intentional. It feels personal. Who does that? What kind of coach talks about competition but refuses to mention the very player who is actually pushing the room forward? Is he threatened? Is he protecting someone else? Or is this just his ego spiraling because he doesn't want to admit Shedeur is outplaying the guy he prefers? No matter how you look at it, it makes Stefanski look unprofessional, insecure, and honestly, a little unhinged. Fans can see it, players can feel it, and the silence speaks louder than any quote he gives. Stefanski is acting like a psychopath who cannot accept reality. He is so locked into his own world that he would rather twist the entire narrative than acknowledge that Shedeur is winning the reps, winning the room, and winning the fan base. And if a head coach can't be honest, can't be fair, and can't handle a real quarterback battle without acting like this, then what is he even doing here anymore? How long can a franchise tolerate a leader who hides, deflects, and refuses to support the most talented guy on the field? How much damage is this doing to the team, to the locker room, to Shedeur himself? And at this point, with all the weird behavior, all the dodging, all the games, isn't it obvious that the Browns should fire Stefanski before he drags this team into another disaster?
Out there. So certainly throughout this season, we've tried to be extremely intentional about development of our players. We've done individual periods on Mondays and Saturdays, which we haven't done before for players that didn't play in the game. You know, just trying to add up all those individual periods, all those minutes of development with their coaches. I think it's just important with young players, and so you're not just assuming that they're getting better by sitting in the meeting room. You want to give them.
When Stefanski goes into that development talk, it sounds fake, forced, and completely out of touch. He tries to act like he's leading some master plan, but the more he talks, the more it feels like he's just trying to cover himself. Why does he keep reminding everyone how intentional he is? Why does he over-explain basic coaching like he's teaching a class instead of running a football team? And why does he suddenly turn into a philosopher every time Shedeur's name should come up? It feels like he's hiding behind long speeches so he doesn't have to face the truth right in front of him. If he's so serious about development, then why does he avoid talking about the young player who's actually developing the fastest? Why pretend everything is equal when it clearly isn't? And why does he sound more stressed, more defensive, and more panicked every time he opens his mouth? The way he describes reps, drills, and physical work makes it seem like he's listing chores, not building a team. Who is he trying to fool? The fans? The players? Himself? Because the whole speech feels like a distraction, a long, boring wall of words designed to avoid saying something simple and honest. If he really cared about development, why does he refuse to acknowledge the quarterback who's grinding harder than the one he keeps protecting? Why does it seem like every comment he makes is aimed at keeping Shedeur in the shadows? And how does he expect the locker room to trust him when his own messages sound shaky, confused, and scared? At this point, you have to wonder, is Stefanski even coaching, or is he just talking to buy time before everyone realizes he's lost control?
But I always want to give credit to Coach Prime for being there to raise his sons. Not only just raise his sons, put his sons in position, not holding his son back, holding his son accountable, and definitely being an outstanding.
When you look at Shedeur, you're not just seeing a quarterback, you're seeing someone who was shaped by a father who refused to let him slip, settle, or hide from his gift. People forget how rare that is. A lot of players grow up without real support, without someone guiding them, pushing them, teaching them what it means to stand tall in moments when the world tries to crush you. But Shedeur had someone who not only believed in him, but walked with him every step, even when the pressure got heavy and the noise got loud. And that matters. It shows in his calm. It shows in how he competes. It shows in the way he carries himself when people doubt him for no reason. You can feel that foundation, that someone in his life cared enough to build him into a young man who doesn't fold, doesn't blame, doesn't fear big stages. How can anyone ignore that? How can anyone pretend that this level of strength just appears out of nowhere? And that's why it's so frustrating when people try to drag him down, overlook him, or treat him like he doesn't deserve the same respect as every other young quarterback fighting to prove himself. Because everything he is today comes from hard work, guidance, and a father who refused to let talent go to waste. That bond created a fire in Shedeur that you can see in every throw, every huddle, every moment he refuses to quit. So when people push unfair narratives or pretend his success is luck, or try to silence his name like it means nothing, it hits deeper. It's not just football. It's a son honoring the work of a man who refused to let him drift. It's a young player carrying years of lessons, discipline, and love. And honestly, that's what makes Shedeur different. That's why people root for him. That's why he deserves every chance, every rep, every ounce of respect. Because he didn't get here alone, but he earned every bit of what he is today.
Shedeur Sanders civil rights investigation. I've told y'all I'm going to be beating this out because there's a civil rights discrepancy that the Cleveland Browns, to me, has done with Shedeur Sanders, not letting him play. It is discrimination. I'll say it once and I'll say it again. I'm stern on that. Everybody should be stern on that discrepancy with the discrimination.
When you look back at everything that has happened with Shedeur in Cleveland, it becomes impossible to ignore the pattern. First, Stefanski refuses to even say his name. Then he hides behind long speeches about development while pretending Shedeur doesn't exist. Then he praises every other rookie, every other quarterback, every other rep, except the one player who has actually earned attention. How is that normal? How is that fair? How do you explain a coach going out of his way, again and again, to avoid giving even basic recognition to a young quarterback who shows up, works hard, and does everything right? It feels targeted, it feels personal, and when things happen over and over like this, you can't call it a mistake, you have to call it what it is: discrimination. So the question becomes, why him? Why this kid? Why this silence? Then you add the weird energy in those press talks. Every time Shedeur's name should come up, Stefanski freezes, dodges, or changes the subject. But when it's another quarterback like DILLON GABRIEL, suddenly he's calm, confident, detailed, open. Why does one player get warmth and support while Shedeur gets ignored? Why is the kid with the stronger resume and the stronger reps treated like he's invisible? How many clues does the public need before calling this behavior out for what it looks like? Because when you keep a young black quarterback on the side, deny him reps he earned, and refuse to even acknowledge him in front of the media, it doesn't look like coaching anymore. It looks like someone using power to hold someone back. And that's why people call it discrimination. Because if it walks like it, if it talks like it, if it hurts like it, What else could it be? And on top of all that, look at the impact. Fans notice, players notice, reporters notice. The energy around the team changes because everyone can feel something is wrong. So how long can this continue? How long can a franchise allow this type of unfair treatment toward a player who has done nothing but work, learn, and make progress? How long before someone steps in and says, "Enough, this is not normal"? Because when a coach refuses to acknowledge talent, blocks opportunities, and controls the narrative to protect his own ego, people start asking real questions. Is this about football, or is this about power? Is this about competition, or is this about keeping Shedeur in a box he doesn't belong in? And most importantly, how can you call this anything other than discrimination when every sign points to the same truth?
Incredibly accurate to all levels of the field. His touch is spectacular. Second best on catchable pass rate over the last 2 years. Only Bo Nix was better. Does not put the ball in harm's way at all. 1.3% turnover-worthy play rate over the last 2 years. Again, only Bo Nix was lower than Shedeur Sanders. Incredibly poised despite taking a ton of hits from his offensive line. Clutch factor, too. There's not another quarterback in college football that you want in a 2-minute drill than Shedeur Sanders.
When you look at these numbers, you see the truth that Stefanski keeps pretending not to see. Shedeur is accurate at every level. He has one of the best touch rates in the game. He protects the ball better than almost every other quarterback in college football. And he stays calm even when his offensive line leaves him to get crushed. How do you ignore a player with those numbers? How do you look at someone who is that safe with the ball, that consistent, that clutch, and still act like he doesn't exist? These stats prove what fans have been saying from day one. Shedeur is not just good, he is elite. He is smart, he is controlled, he is reliable, and he plays like someone who already understands the game at a professional level. So the question is simple. Why does his own coach act blind to it? Why does Stefanski pretend this level of skill is nothing special? And this is exactly why people are angry at Stefanski. Instead of celebrating a quarterback with top-tier accuracy, top-tier decision-making, and the mental toughness to survive more hits than most players could handle, Stefanski buries him under silence and excuses. What kind of coach looks at these numbers and still chooses someone else? What kind of coach ignores a quarterback who is this careful with the ball, this calm in chaos, and this dangerous in the clutch? The only explanation left is that Stefanski is letting ego or bias get in the way of football logic. Because Shedeur has every trait you'd want in a starter: accuracy, discipline, courage, timing, and the ability to rise in the biggest moments. Yet Stefanski refuses to trust him, refuses to name him, refuses to give him the credit he earns. And honestly, that says more about Stefanski than it does about Shedeur. One is proving himself every day. The other is proving he shouldn't be running a team. In the end, Stefanski's refusal to recognize Shedeur only exposes how scared he is of the truth, because the numbers, the poise, and the talent all point to one thing. Shedeur deserves that spot, and the more he's ignored, the louder the truth becomes. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you subscribe and like the video. Do you think Stefanski is avoiding Shedeur because he's threatened? Or is something else going on behind the scenes?